All right. So we're talking about creating rounds on, in this case, it's going to be on a plane. Right, so let's say that I have a plane in perspective. There, right? And if we do the same example that it's in Sketching the Basics, I would need to find the center of that plane. Right, so that I know where to put my half line that goes into the perspective, correct? So I need to decide where my round is going to start and where it's going to end. In the example that you have there, it's basically a full round that goes in this corner. So if I want to do what is on that example, I probably will find so that it looks like a little square. And I will know that from here to here, I'm going to have that round, right? Making sure that as I approach to this point, my arc is getting tangent to that. Now, how do I know, how in the world do I know how to make this line look like it's the same line as this one? And it's really difficult because I could do that, I can try and do that, and it almost never succeeds when you do it by eye. But we have a very useful technique, and it comes from this diagonal, right, where this intersects. So what I can do, and we remember how we can mirror things from the first assignment we did, I know that this line here is the same as that line there, correct? So if I decide to project this point in my perspective here, I know that this arc, and I'm actually off perspective a little bit. I know that that arc is going to be touching in that side. What if I know that I need to touch these three, right? What if I want more? Well, I can create more diagonal lines. Probably now from this point that I arbitrarily chose, I'm going to go here to the end or to the corner, so I can have another one on this side, and then I can correct, and I'll find the next one. So it depends on how many I have. So once I do that, I can follow that line and make it tangent to that, and I have that round. I need to make sure this becomes tangent as well. So I want to have the round there at the back. I could just make sure that this is the same distance. So I divide, go through the middle point, find it there. And I can draw my round. Oops. Okay, and I know it's going to touch this point, this point. If I project from my diagonal, I know it's going to touch that point. So I have that round. And I've just created that. And it could be from an object that is kind of like a cylinder but with a flat side, right? So that's one way to do it. What if I didn't want to have rounds that go all the way? Do you have a question?
I was going to ask, so once you create like the squares that you're making the rounds in, you just make a second square and then draw the ellipse?
Yeah, you could draw the complete ellipse and then find the points in between. Yes. So for example, that's a good point. Let's say that I don't want to have I don't want a round that goes all the way there. I just want a round that goes from here to here, right? So I can either just draw that arc, or like you say, I could probably, I know that every vertical cylinder that I do has an axis that goes like that, so I could kind of like find where that is. So it depends on how thick that I want that arc to be. In this case, it's very little. I'll just like say, okay, I want that. So I want my arc on that side to start in the same same point, right? I want the same arc here to turn the same point. And then I could either eyeball this distance on that side, or I could actually find it going through that midpoint. Right, so it's there. So it's here, right? So I could either just add that or project from my diagonal. So I go tangent, going through there and closing into that. And with that information, again, I can either eyeball this distance, or I can bring it through the point. So I know that my rounds are going to be going there, right? So this is an example of single rounding, right? Ones that have that top box. Let's say that I wanted to create something this tall. It should be foreshortening a little bit more. Right, so how do I do it at the bottom? I know that this line is touching that edge of the box. I know that this is where my radius starts on this side. So I just bring those points down so that this line, I know that it's touching. I can bring this down. I know that line will be touching here, right? And I can just kind of like mimic the round that I have there at the top there, right? Now how do I do it with this? I bring the tangent down. Right? And I do the same here, bring the tangent down. And you'll notice that I have lines that are showing where my surface changes from a flat to a round to a flat, right? Having that double line there is important because we will use that as our highlight when we render with marker. Okay? All right. So what if I wanted to create something that is not necessarily blocky, but that has that curvature? And I can have that plane, and I can decide to have a curve that touches from here to there, and probably going, let's not go through the middle, let's make it a little bit more interesting. Go away. All right, I need to restart this thing, sorry. Oh, I know what happened. My awesome keyboard is acting up again. Okay, still not. Okay, so we were saying, if let's say that I want to touch these 3 points. Let's bring this a little bit closer to the edge. And this is where your practice with curves kind of like plays off. Let's say that I want this line to be that. Oops. Right? And I want to have the same line on the other side. So what do? I'm going to mirror that over here. I'll eyeball the other two, just for the sake of speed. If I want to know where this crosses, I can project to my diagonals. So I have a little bit more reference of how this and that go along. So I make sure that my line is correctly mirrored. Okay. And this is probably a little bit more complicated than what you were expected to do for this assignment, but I want to show you an interesting scenario. So let's do another arc there. And again, this will be an exclusively single round object. All right, so let's say that I start with that object. I'm just like mimicking those lines. All right, so if I want to add rounds to this, I can do the same thing from here to here and just add that little round. If I bring those lines down, I can add that round there. Right? If I decide that I want that round there, I can add that. I can project this one to this side, so I can add that round, bring down the tangents, and then have that, right? So I have a slightly more complex shape that is based and made of curved lines, okay? So we can do this example here in Sketchbook for your reference. Okay, let's analyze this one first. You'll see how I'm creating a series of little cubes because I want the reference of my plane that is behind and the plane that's going to be at the front. So basically points that I'm interested in where my radius begins, where it ends, and where I want to go. In this case, I'm using the inside of this cube just to make sure it ends there, and then I'm joining it with an arc and another arc. This arc and this arc are identical. This arc and this arc are identical, and these two I could do with the method we just saw. This is the same construction, but it's a construction that's vertical. You'll see it's the same thing. I need to have a reference on the plane at the top and the plane at the bottom, and then I can like close them there. So let's see it in action. All right, so let's use this same plane that we had here. So this is only one of my planes. Let's imagine that I wanted to go up here. So I'm going to draw some vertical lines. And then I'm going to decide how tall this box will be. This one is a little bit off. All right, so we have that area. I need to know where my radius starts and where it ends. So let's think that at the bottom, this would be where it starts, where it ends. So I'll bring these things up, right, to know where they go here. I can start projecting it to the sides. I can project it here at the bottom as well. So you know where this one goes. Going into the distance. Alright, I'm going to eyeball the ones on the other side. Alright, so I know where I want this thing to exist. I probably know where I want this thing to exist, right? In the same way, I can recreate the rounds that I had done in the past with the techniques. In this case, I'm going to do like a fast version of those. And in the book, we're going to this point. So I'm going to create that round. I'm going to create that round. Right? Notice how this one and that one are identical. Right? I can probably create this on that side. I will create this on that side. Notice how I start creating that double construction, right? Right, did it by eyeball, but I could create my diagonal and project to the other side. So I know this. Something like that. This will do something like that. And then I just need kind of like close the tangents. And there we go. So hold on one second. And that's how we would do our construction that we see here in the example of sketching the basics, right? We get that full half or a quarter of a sphere that is explained here, right? But mostly we're going to have partials version of that sphere. We won't always have the full quarter. So if you notice in these examples, it's basically a repetition of that form here at the top, at the bottom, but slightly larger, and they are connected by rounds. So this is the most probably common form of continuity in ID. And well, this is the example that we just saw before, just to create the whole volume. In this case, what they're suggesting is create like your top shape, then create the rounds out to create the bottom shape, and then follow the form. And so you could try something like that. You do it like this. So let's say that you had that shape there. Actually, let's go back and use this one. So let's say that I already drew that and I want to create a round. So I'm going to do kind of like an inverse version of the one sketch that we saw. Instead of starting with the small one and then growing it back, I'm going to do the opposite. So for this one, I'm going to create a parallel repetition, like an offset of that more complex curve that I created. That's going to just go inside, and it's going to keep kind of like the same distance all around, on the understanding that with foreshortening, as I go larger, this space and that space should be a little bit different. It should be a little bit smaller, right? If I do it exactly the same, it may give the illusion of being right. Never bigger here on the far side on the other side. But you'll notice how I'm kind of like going around and recreating that that shape. And you'll also notice that what I drew, I have different curves, and I know where my radius starts and where it ends. So understanding that, I can use this to understand where it connects on that side, and understand how high I want to bring this. So from there to there, I can add that round, right? If I want this to go here, I know I want the same height here, so I can create that round, right? If I go in here, I'll want the same height. I can create the round, and I can do the same on the other side wherever my kind of radius start, right? So now basically what I'm doing is bringing that surface up with a little bit of an offset. Just need to make sure that all of this are like makes sense. We're gonna see a little bit of that on the other side. And basically connecting that. Right? If I added a section line to describe that radius, I would have to come down and then connect from here up, right? And I could do the same from here to there, right? I could do the same thing if I had run through at the bottom. I could do the same construction down, right? So it is about creating that plane that you're going to be using, then creating the same plane in offset, making that other plane slightly smaller, and then if I have rounds in both, I'll just connect those rounds, right? In short. Any questions about this one? No? So let's try now and do some exercises trying to emulate this for the next few minutes, and then before the end of the class I'll show you color accents and vignettes for type A sketches.